and I look at the price, I'm like, I can't see anymore.
I do that sometimes. Wow, that's really cool. Not $400. Cool. See you later. What am I drawing this day? There we go. Whoa, a spider web is on my thing. Spiders are making their house. I'm running out of drawing book pages. That's the thing I don't say too often.
Hopefully you have other ones that have some. You just don't stick to one book, that's all. You do a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got a couple books worth of stuff. It's just spread out between 4 or 5 of them. Yeah. A page. Ooh. That's how you know it's exciting. The world just almost collapsed. You see that shit?
I think there's something missing.
What are you talking about? That's a face hugger ring. That's right. Hanging out down the street. Same old road. Alrighty. Put my secret documents away. Oh yeah, your secret documents are in here as well. Okay.
No.
All those are in there as well. These are too the finished.
Wouldn't that be a cute hand tattoo if it was done better?
What?
Let's see, it was on that hand that I did. Except for the writing.
Oh, you're like, what's it called? I almost said hentai. Henna? Yeah. Thanks, internet jackasses.
It's like, well, I'm gonna be making so much money I can get my first tattoo soon.
You're making so much money I could give you a tattoo. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It'd be cool to give you your first tattoo. Alright, what am I looking at? Just hanging out on stream. I'm being inspired. Someone join the chat and say something. Inspire me. Be my muse.
That's interesting.
Huh. It's like a bug. Did you look to see if he was looking?
What?
Did you look up to see if he was looking?
Yeah.
I did. Now when he dies, we're never gonna see the name, like the word the same.
Mm-hmm.
Hanging out. Hanging out. How the song goes. I'll be working on the way. There it is. Put that right meow. Huh?
Of course it's not a mess. That's why would it be? It's only really pretty.
Damn. Oh, nice. That was cool. It would break.
Yeah. Check out this orange. Very orange.
Nice. That's cool.
I don't have in either of our sizes.
Dinah, blow your horn. Dinah, won't you blow? Dinah, won't you blow? Dinah, blow your horn.
Let's see. Actual stretching, y'all. You guys are strict.
Off my computer. No, you're not gonna. Fine, whatever. Give me a little bit of sugar. Oh yeah. I am no more. Something about something for. Guy, have some fun. Something about, something that, something this. The weird thing he does. Why don't you ever beatbox, Jessica? Huh?
Never had the urge to.
You never even practiced with me. Wow, Jessica, period panties. You don't even have to wear a cup or anything. Just wear these panties and change them at the end of the day.
Sounds gross.
Yeah. At least that's what I assume they are. Period panties. Blech. Hip hop's supervillain. Well, they're calling that guy a supervillain now. Oh. Stroke that ego. Oh, I believe in God. Oh, I believe in God.
Help dear antler in me.
Oh, hell yeah. Antler.
It's in your side.
Oh, yeah?
9. Right?
Yep, 9. That is correct.
In order to get the principle of a network across, I have to convey to you.
Not today. You're not doing that loud noise.
To convey to you an idea.
There we go.
In order to get the principle of a network across, I have to convey to you an idea which is extremely simple, but which is difficult to grasp only because we're not used to it. We are used to thinking as Westerners as having a certain kind of language and therefore a certain kind of logic that goes with it. We're used to thinking of the world in terms of the relationship to the outside world in terms of what would scientifically be called Newtonian. To some of the atomic theories of people like Democritus, who were among the great pre-Socratic philosophers of ancient Greece. And so we may as well begin with a little bit about the history of the idea of an atom, because this has always fascinated people. What is the world fundamentally? What is all this? Well, one way of finding out is to take a knife and chop something in two, so you can see what's inside it. What is an apple inside? What is a seed inside? What is a human body inside? And then you find that when you chop a thing in two, you've got two pieces, but the cutting reveals that it has a structure inside. And the structure is composed of what we call organs or parts. And then in turn, in order to inquire into them, we take them and we chop them apart. And in our curiosity to find out how it's made, in just the same way that a child will take a toy to pieces, we chop and chop and chop until we've got bits so small that they are the same width as the edge of the knife. And they can't be cut anymore unless we can find a finer knife. And so when we get down to that bit beyond which there is no bitter, that is to say, it can't be chopped any further, it is called in Greek atomos, which means the first letter A means non, tomos, cuttable. And so the word atom means that smallest particle of the world which can't be cut into any smaller particle. That's the original idea of atomism. So then, we went further than that to the notion that the world was built of atoms in the same sort of way that a house could be built of bricks or stones. The world is seen, therefore, as a composite of fundamental particles. Then what remained to be discovered was the laws governing the relationship between these particles. And so naturally one thought of them as little balls. Why balls? Because balls are hard to cut. If you take a ball bearing and hit at it with a sword, it's liable to jump right off to one side. A cube will submit to being cut, but a ball is very difficult to get at. A very strong form of nature. But people have always tended to consider atoms as balls, especially atoms of liquid. There was a notion, you see, that the atoms of the element of earth were cubes, because cubes all sit together rather firmly. Liquid, which when you push up goes bloop, that was balls. Fire was made of, if I remember rightly, pyramids. Air, I can't remember what air was made of, and what their atoms were shaped like. Maybe sausages or something like that, because the air is pretty difficult to get at too. But they had some ideas. But fundamentally, what has influenced Western thought, and still influences Western thought, is the idea of an atom as some sort of fundamental little planetary system. And so these things come into relationship with each other, and they bang each other around, as in the game of billiards. And so if we are to understand the world profoundly, we have to find out what are the laws governing the relationship of the atoms.
Wow, this one's starting out fun.
Now, you must understand, first of all, a principle about what are called laws of nature.
I don't know what it is, but it's definite, like, shaped, you know what I mean? It's got, like, juts in it and stuff.
We inherit the idea of laws of nature from our theology. And our theology that we've grown up with is in certain ways peculiarly different from the theologies of Oriental peoples. Jewish theology and Christian theology, which have entered very profoundly into the common sense of the average person, have an image of the world which is quite basically political, and we'll go further than that and say it's monarchical. Based on the idea that the world is a construct evoked out of nothingness by the commandment of a celestial king. Now, there may be Jews in this room who are practicing and devout Jews, and there may be Christians in this room who are practicing and devout Christians. And I don't want to offend you by any imagery that I choose or remarks that I may make about this imagery, because I don't suppose that anybody has come to this room and to this particular place who is either a practicing or Christian Jew, who has what I would call a naive idea of God. But the funny thing is about our ideas of God is that our symbols, the images, the mythological forms which we use to describe God have an extremely powerful influence on our feelings and on the way we behave. After all, I was a member of the Church of England when I was a small boy, and that had a very powerful effect on me. And in the Church of England, it's quite obvious, from an emotional point of view, as distinct from a very intellectual point, that God stands behind the King of England. And the King of England and the Archbishop of Canterbury and the whole hierarchy of lords and ladies and noblemen and officials who descend from this point are somehow involved, at any rate this is perfectly clear to a small boy, are somehow involved with the hierarchy of heaven. Because at morning prayer, to which we went every Sunday, the minister would pray a prayer which began, O Almighty Father, high and mighty, King of kings, Lord of lords, the only ruler of princes, who dost from thy throne behold all the dwellers upon earth. Most heartily we beseech thee with thy favor to behold our most gracious sovereign Lord, King George, etc. And so this was a very courtly procedure at which the clergyman, dressed in his proper robes, proceeded to the altar, which is a kind of earthly symbol of the throne of heaven, made due obeisance, and presented this petition with all proper humility. Now, these are things that if you're brought up in that environment, you take for granted. That seems to be the natural attitude to God. But imagine someone coming in from a culture where God is not conceived in the image of kingship. How strange he would find this behavior. There's all this bowing and scraping, because you know very well that places where they bow and scrape and where there are thrones are places of terror. Because anybody who rules by force is and must be basically terrified. That's why he has to have all these protections, why he has to be addressed in the right form of language. Say you go into a court today, an ordinary U.S. law court. There is a very strict etiquette. And if you start laughing, the judge will bang the gavel and threaten contempt of court and all sorts of dire punishment. Because here, everybody has to be serious. It's like on the parade ground. All those Marines lined up, you know, and they salute the flag, and they have to have a very grim expression on it. Serious. And so, in the courts of kings, they have to be serious because kings are afraid of laughter. They're also afraid of being attacked suddenly. So everybody has to kneel down, because if you kneel down or prostrate yourself, you're at a disadvantage. And the king stands or sits at his throne with his bodyguards ranged on either side. See, like that. We've already got the form of a church. The bishop at his throne, with attendant canons and clergy flanking him on either side. And so certain great Catholic cathedrals are called, they describe with the word basilica. And basilica, from the Greek basileus or basilus, is the king. So the basilica is the court of the king. The very titles of God in the Bible, King of Kings and Lord of Lords, are of course borrowed from the Persian emperors. the Cyrus, it's the Greek word, Kyrios, meaning Lord. So the Mass begins with the invocation, Kyrie eleison, Lord have mercy upon us. Titles are borrowed from Persian emperor. And so the rites that have become associated with Christian religion, and to some extent the Jewish religion, are reflections of those great autocratic monarchs of the ancient Near East. The Cyruses of Persia, the pharaohs of Egypt, and people like Hammurabi, who were the great Chaldean monarchs. The universe was conceived then as being ruled on a political pattern like that, so that the Hammurabi in particular, and Moses after him, were great lawgivers.
What?
They were the wise ones who laid down the rules. They were the patriarchs who said, now this is the way everybody's got to behave. Somebody's got to tell what the rules are. And since you can't all agree among yourselves as to what the rules are going to be, I'm going to tell you what to do. And since I'm the toughest guy around here, and I got these brothers of mine who are pretty tough too, we're going to say, this is the law, see, and you got to obey. So this is how we have got historically the idea of there being a law of nature. That somebody told nature what to do. Somebody told, for example, a wonderful poem by Father Feeney about bees. God, to some sticky stuff not yet alive in a hive, said, come, be my bee and buzz as I bid. And sure enough, it was, and it did. See, and in the beginning, let there be light. A commandment. So commandment is the fundamental idea. So the quest of the law of nature is the quest for the true understanding of the Word of God. For by the word of the Lord were the heavens made, and all the hosts of them by the breath of his mouth. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. What is that Word? If we could find out the Word of God, here is the idea, you see, we could perform incredible magic. That's why, for example, the name of God in the Bible is not to be uttered except once by the high priest in the Holy of Holies, once a year. Otherwise, that name, Yod-Heh-Vah-Heh in Hebrew, we don't really know how it was pronounced. And Jehovah mixes up those consonants with the vowels of Adonai. Then it's all mixed up in translation. But anyway, Jehovah is a polite way of saying what can't be said. Because if you know the word, if you know the name of God, you have power. You have the power of God. And so all ancient ideas of magic were based on knowing the names of God. It is said that there are 100 names of God, and 99 are revealed to us. And the camel knows the 100th name, which is why he looks so snooty. But so also, a person in what we now call primitive orders of society are loath to reveal their names. Because if I know your true name, I can utter it and have power over you. Now, you say, well, that seems a very naive idea, but it is exactly through the knowledge of names that we have Western science. And that is magic. That is through trying to understand the laws of nature. So that if you could understand the word underneath all the phenomena, you could change the phenomena and create magic. Only this, that many scientists got rather sophisticated and have realized that the word comes later than the event. That in the beginning wasn't the word. Of course, if you want to make new sense out of the phrase "in the beginning was the word," you have to go to Hinduism, where they have the idea that Vak VAC in Sanskrit, or speech, is the basis of creation. But by this, they fundamentally mean vibration. As sound, you see, is they say that is, you see, if you listen to sound and go right down into it, fundamentally get what sound is all about, you understand the whole mystery of it. Because the whole mystery of things is vibrating energy, on and off.
Oh, the little box?
Life and death.
Yeah, the little drawer thing.
Have to have off, have on, have to have on, have off.
No idea.
What a relief.
My ring.
But there they say that's the beginning. Now, but they also say,
your other one should fit.
In another sense, on another level, that the roots of Sanskrit, say the root form, say the word Buddha, comes from the root form Bud, which means to know or to be awake. Bhava, which means becoming, comes from the root Bhu, which means to grow. So on. Karma, doing, comes from the root to act. So they say, though, that the roots of Sanskrit are not simply the roots of the language, they're the roots of life. Because in another sense, altogether, you see, you create the world by the word.
I found it. It was in the box.
And this is something that we're not very conscious of. It's the way you think that determines your basic reactions to what happens. In the words of Shakespeare, there is nothing either good or ill, but thinking makes it so. Thinking is talking to yourself inside your head. And we, through this, build up all sorts of weird notions. We say, for example, well, one day you'll have to die. Have to? What's the sense? What's the emotional content of saying you'll have to die? It means it's going to be something imposed upon you against your will.
Someday you'll die.
So it's put in this
have
passive
to.
mode. Have to.
You have to.
You'll be compelled to die.
It's not about you.
But I can't be compelled to die unless I'm fighting it. Supposing I want to die, supposing I commit suicide, or supposing we look at it all in another way and say, when I get a disease and die as a result of it, getting a disease is something I do, just as much as taking a walk. Only we've got our thoughts arranged so that we say, you ought not to get a disease, even if it's just plain old age. Somehow you ought not to do that. You ought to go on. And therefore, you can't say, when death comes about, but to put it in the words of Robert Louis Stevenson, I laid me down with a will. Because we've got this hang-up about life being divided into two parts. Things that we do, on the one hand, and things that happen to us on the other. And Buddhists say, what happens to you is your karma. And people don't readily understand that. They think my karma, something awful happened to me because of something bad I did in my last life. And therefore, I've got bad karma. Karma simply means your doing, your action. So that when something that happens to me is called my karma, it means that it's your own doing. And if you recognize that it's your own doing, it's never bad karma. It's only bad karma if you refuse to admit that it's your own doing and merely blame someone or something else that it's something that happened to you. Now I've digressed a little because what I was getting at was the meaning of a law of nature. laws of nature were taken over, the idea of the law of nature was taken over by Western science from this ancient magical notion of the Word of God, the commandment of God, being the foundation for everything that happens in the world. But now, today, in Western 20th century science, there is an entirely new idea of the law of nature. The laws of nature are not things that exist in any real sense, which phenomena like the motion of stars or behavior of animals and rocks, they're not phenomena which these things obey. The universe is doing its stuff. But because we have a certain kind of structure and brain, we want to make sense of it. And therefore, we find various ways of understanding the world by the principle of regularity. Now, what's that? Let's take a clock. A clock ticks regularly. But the world does not tick regularly. Inconveniently enough, the sun does not have the Earth go round it in a neat 360 days. This has always irritated calendar makers. How to make a rational calendar? There is no solution, because the rotations of the Earth upon its own axis do not neatly synchronize with its rotation around the sun. There's always something a little odd about it. So what we do is we superimpose over this rather odd elliptical path the ideal figure of a circle with its 360 degrees. Now that is also like putting a ruler along a piece of wood and saying this piece of wood can be cut to 12 inches. Now there are no inches in the wood. Inches are a method, a technique that human beings have invented for measuring things. And so we can cut out of a piece of cloth or a trunk of a tree so many feet. Well, originally, it's simply comparing the trunk with us by putting our feet over it one after another, saying it's so many feet long, or so many spans when you stretch out the hand. This is the fundamental idea of measurement, and the inch is, of course, one joint. Not your hand. And so this comparison of man's body and its regular shape, you see 10 fingers on either side, 5 fingers on either side makes 10, 5 toes on either side makes 10. And so by stretching ourselves out, as it were, against nature, we measured it. And the idea of measurement is the same idea as the idea of the law of nature. A law of nature is exactly the same kind of thing as a ruler, or a hammer, or a saw. It is a way of thinking which enables us to control our environment. By observing regularities, and then by making a calculus, which is a process really of betting. Will it be regular next time? And the odds are that it may be. If it's done it once this way, it's likely to do it again that way. So in this way, you predict eclipses of the sun. You predict the phases of the moon. You measure them. You count it. How it went, how often it did it like this, how often it did it like that. And you say, well, it keeps on doing it. And you think, wow, this is fascinating. It seems to obey me because now I can tell you anytime it's going to come up. And if the other people around haven't figured it out, they think I'm magic because I'm going to say to them, the moon is going to change at such and such a time. So many days from now, it's going to have a different shape. They'll say, my God, he was right. And they'll think I'm making it happen. Because I can do that. So I get a rather privileged position. Because I could predict.
Love you.
But that's the basic idea, you see, of the law of nature. The law of nature is a human network, like the lines of celestial latitude and longitude. They don't exist in the heavens. But we project them on the sky in order to measure the positions of the stars. Because the stars are scattered in a very confusing way. And just try and remember that mess and figure it out. So the clever ones, you see, just said, look at it through a network, a spherical network. Then you can number all the squares of the spherical network in accordance with the principles of the circle, the 360 degrees. You throw the network on the sky. It's really there, see. Then to help you a little further, pick out some of the big stars and see if they make a shape. You know, this is like doing a Rorschach test. And you see, oh, look, there's one over there that looks like a zipper. Or some people call it a plow. And there's one there that looks like a cross. There's one there that, by some extreme wangling, can be made to look like a virgin. And all these lines that join the constellations together are our ways of projecting a pattern upon this great and glorious confusion so that we can remember it and chart it. But obviously, you could very well see that if you looked at the same pattern of stars from some completely different position in space, all those constellations and their arrangements would vanish. You would have to invent a new one. Because there is nowhere where the stars really are. It depends where you're looking from. So in this sense, then, man in nature, with his extraordinary symmetrical brain and its amazing complications, figures it out. And it's man who introduces the law into the world. He invents it. But in a way, invenire, to invent, is to discover. But what we discover, in a way, is not something that's out there. When we invent the laws of nature, we are discovering something about ourselves and our own passion for prediction, for regularity, for keeping things under control. That's what there has to be a law.
Explanation.
So then, going back right now to the beginning of what I started to say.
What?
Everyone has to have things explained.
Yeah.
The question was then,
yeah, why?
What is the law of relationship between the atoms?
Can't just
Between the fundamental billiard balls of which the world is composed. Well, you watch the game of billiards, and there's a cue, and it hits that ball, and then it moves over, and it hits that one, and then that hits that one, and then that hits that one. And so the final ball, which moves into the pocket, has its behavior explained
Yep. It has
through
to be
its
a reason.
contact with the other billiard balls and the final contact with the